So this is conditionals part 2, and here we're looking at the non-standard forms of conditionals. In part 1 we looked at the simpler, more standard forms. Okay, so here we're going to look at when we put a modal in the if clause. This sentence is your standard form. So if I were you, I would vote. This is just a second conditional. Now, what we see is that you would not put a modal in the if clause. In fact, it's incorrect. The modal will go in the main clause. However, there are some exceptions, so we'll look at those exceptions here. So if you would take a seat, I will call the director. This is basically intended to be polite. It's a polite structure, but it can also mean if you're able to or if you're willing to take a seat. So essentially you can think of that as just being polite. So it's not really the functional modal, the real modal here, which determines the number of the conditional, is in the main clause. This is just to be polite. Okay, let's look at will as well. If you will take a seat, I will call the director. It's pretty much the same thing. If it will help, I will get you some painkillers. Here we're putting in the extra modal, and it has to be will, in order to show a result. So, if the result is that I'm helping, I will get you some painkillers. Let's look at another one. If you will continue to play dangerous games. This sentence could have been finished, but the effect is basically just here in the if clause itself. The idea is to say that playing dangerous games is, it's very bad behavior. And so this will here is just sort of stressing that I feel that your behavior is very bad. This is a little old-fashioned, a little formal. Let's go now to, if you should see Margaret, please give her my regards. Now the should here is polite and perhaps a little old-fashioned as well, but it does serve a function in that you're saying that it's fairly unlikely that this person will see Margaret. So you're kind of playing down your expectations. You're not really expecting that they will see Margaret. Okay, so let's move along. And we're going to look at inversion. So this sentence is not inverted. So if you require any assistance, I will be available. This is a standard structure, and this is the first conditional. What we're going to do is just have a look at what would happen if it was more formal. So we could make that more formal by putting a modal in here. We could put should. If you should require any assistance, I will be available. This makes it sound more formal, more polite. Now, what happens if we invert this? We get, should you require any assistance, I will be available. So this is an inversion of the more formal one. And you can see what you do here is the if disappears completely. The should is moved in front of the you, and that's where the inversion occurs. We switch places. So should moves to the first place, you moves to the second place, so they're swapping position. So that's an inversion with conditionals, and that's usually to make it sound more formal. It's really common in the third conditional. So had I known you needed assistance, I would have helped. So we've got had known, the past perfect, and then would have plus past participle. So that's your third conditional for referring to the past. But this is a really common inversion. It's a more formal structure. If of course is disappearing here or disappears here. Other conjunctions. Sometimes grammar books will call these disguised conditionals. I quite like that name, disguised conditionals. So there are different conjunctions that you can use. So if is a conjunction. It joins two clauses together, and there's quite a few others that we can use. So let's have a look at some now, referring specifically to those that are used with the first and second conditionals. Supposing you lost all your money, what would you do? Now, supposing is used when there's a bit of imagination involved. So it's going to most likely be with the second conditional. It's when it's not a very likely event. So we're expecting that you won't lose all your money. couple of other ways to do it are, in the event of losing all your money, what would you do? Or in the event that you lost all your money, what would you do? Just notice that in the event of, it wants a gerund here, so that's really a noun, not so much a verb, even though I've put it in pink. So it really could possibly have been blue, indicating a noun. And in the event that you lost, if we look here, once we include that plus with a subject and a verb, we're actually creating a noun clause. So in both cases, we've got possibly a gerund and here a noun clause. So we really see that it wants a noun to follow it. So in the event, it gets followed by a noun grammatically. It means the same as supposing, I should point that out. So they all have the same meaning. Here's another one. Provided you do your homework, you can go to the party. Providing is exactly the same. So providing you do your homework, you can go to the party. There's no difference there. This is really just another form of if. Going to the next one. On condition that you do your homework, you can go to the party. So it's the same as above, on condition that. And another way to do it is, as long as you do your homework, you can go to the party. And so long as you do your homework, you can go to the party. You can see, it might be worth mentioning that in these cases, it's the speaker themselves who is placing the condition. So sort of making the rules. The speaker themselves is making the rules. If only you do your homework... only if you do your homework can you go to the party. So it might be worth noting that the structure changes a bit here. So if we use only if, and definitely not if only has a completely different meaning. So only if you do your homework can you go to the party. The modal has been moved forward, because if you look at provided you do your homework, you can. So it was subject and then can, subject then modal. Here the modal moves forward. So that's just something to notice that could possibly come up in an exam. It's a bit of a trap, really. It's just a strange little difference when we use only if. Only if is also used by itself, so without the rest of the conditional. You could just say, someone says, can I go to the party? And you respond, only if you do your homework. So you would need to bother with the rest. It's quite common to hear this type of structure. Let's move to the next one. Unless there is a delay, we will arrive at 2 p.m. or unless there is a delay, we should arrive at 2 p.m. This is the first conditional pretty much, even though we have should here. Unless is quite tricky, so you're going to have to think about unless a little bit. And the way it works is this. It essentially is the if and the not. Although I have read in at least one grammar book that they think that it's really only if plus not. So let's check that out. If there is not a delay, we will arrive at 2 p.m. So unless there is a delay, we'll arrive at 2 p.m. So you're saying we need to not have a delay to get this result. So that's why we're saying not. But as I said, some grammar books argue that it's only if there is not a delay, we will arrive at 2 p.m. Another one, in the case of an emergency, break the glass. This one is different in that here we actually have a noun. There's no subject or verb. So that makes this one a bit different in the case of. And we get the same thing in the event of. And again, we have just the noun here, followed by, in both of them, followed by an imperative, just directly to the verb without any subject. With the third conditional, there are a few conjunctions that are used only with the third conditional. So let's have a look at those. So here is a standard form. If you hadn't helped me, I would have drowned. So you can see that this is third conditional. We've got had plus past participle and then would have plus past participle. So but for your help, I would have drowned. Notice that but for is, it includes this not here. And another way to do it is, if not for your help, I would have drowned. you have to see as well that this is a noun. So again, it's best to do it this way. You could say, but for you not helping me, I would have drowned, but it's quite awkward. So best just to go for a noun structure here. Obviously, this is a determiner, but you see here the noun. Essentially, we're looking at noun grammar. All right. Well, and that is the end. So there are a few other details and varieties of conditional out there that I haven't mentioned, but this covers the majority, and it should be enough for particularly for the Cambridge exams. Okay, and that's all.